Hey everybody, John from Kraft Music here today with Devon from Elektron Music Machines. We're here today to welcome Elektron to the Kraft Music family of brands, find out a little bit about the company and some of its products in sort of the broad strokes, and possibly go in depth later with some more videos to come to this channel. So welcome, Devon.
Thank you very much.
Welcome, Elektron, to Kraft Music. Anything you'd like to tell us in general about Elektron, the company?
Well, let's see. Elektron products are designed and built in Sweden. We've been around since 1998. Our first product was, it's our legacy product now. It's called the SID Station. It sort of has a cult following, where we took a Commodore 64 sound chip and put it in a little box, and it just grew from there. And now we have a little bit more high-end products. As I said, all these are designed and built in Sweden. They carry a 3-year factory warranty. We also have a global online community called Elektronauts for our users. These are all very high quality materials, and there's similarities between all of them. So once you start to get to know one Elektron product, you begin to get familiar very quickly with the functionality of the entire line.
Certainly one thing that's common to all of them, and one thing that is called out frequently as sort of one of Elektron's many sort of strong suits, is the step sequencer.
Yes.
That's in all of these instruments.
Yes.
And in particular, what you guys call parameter locks
Yes.
is a big part of the Elektron workflow and sort of the special sauce.
Exactly, absolutely. As you can see, you'll see some similarities. They all have 16-step sequencer right here, as well as the keys. The step sequences don't have to be 16 steps long. You can actually multiply them up to 64 steps long. You can even chain patterns together and get even longer patterns. But essentially, yeah, what they have in common is our sophisticated step sequencer. It started here with the machine drum, and then as we progressed along the line, we added more features. We saw what users wanted to do, and now the Elektron step sequencer is very fun to use. It's very powerful. Once you get the hang of it, you'll have a blast.
So before we talk about each piece and its capabilities and strengths, is there anything else to sort of tell us about the general progression of the line?
Sure,
or
sure.
Anything common to some of the products but not all of them?
Sure,
or, yeah.
sure. Well, basically, this is our entire hardware product line. We still manufacture and sell every one of these, but I'll start with the oldest here. The machine drum is a digital drum machine. The mono machine is a digital synthesizer, 6-voice digital synthesizer. Octatrack is an 8-track digital sampler. And then these three over here are the newest in the line. They're all analog. So this is the Analog Rytm. It's a drum machine. The Analog 4, which is a 4-voice tabletop synthesizer. And then its big brother, the Analog Keys, which is the same 4-voice synthesizer with a joystick and a velocity and aftertouch sensitive keyboard. What's important about the Analog series is that we've developed a technology that is free for all owners of the Analog series, and it's called Overbridge. I'm really excited to tell you about it. Basically, it allows the user to connect any of their Elektron analog devices with a single USB cable to their computer and integrate the capabilities of the device flawlessly into the DAW production environment. So essentially, these are now the world's first analog VST synths and sound processors.
So it's not just audio recording over USB. It's some automation and programming of the instruments from your computer.
Absolutely.
And
yeah.
some sending of sounds that you might have in the box out to these for processing as well.
Correct.
Almost like a hardware plug-in kind of thing.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. Not only will you be able to multi-track audio coming out of the device through a single USB cable, you will also be able to send audio from your DAW into the circuitry of the hardware device and process it through both the digital effects that these units have, as well as their analog sound processing section. So for example, filters, overdrive stage, etc. So they're basically VST synths and sound processors.
And as we stand here today, Overbridge is in public beta.
That's right.
But it's come a long way, I know, since you guys announced it a year and a half or so ago.
Yes.
And anything to tell us about sort of the current state of Overbridge? Or
basically, the public beta release has gone very well. We have a lot of users signing up. They've been very patient, and it's been going great. People are amazed with just the smoothness of setup, the smoothness of the actual GUI on your computer. We're really excited about it, and we have more features rolling out as the 1.0 release date approaches.
And once again, just to draw a line under it, as you said, this is something that is absolutely free to owners
Yes.
of these instruments.
Just
it's
go to
not
elektron.se.
buy another plug-in or buy anything else. Part of the package.
Correct, absolutely. Just go to elektron.se and you can sign up and download the public beta. That will include the VST plugins that you can drag right into your DAW.
Fantastic. So why don't we look a little bit, and again, sort of keep it general, but talk a little bit about each piece and its capabilities. And
Sure.
You mentioned before that the machine drum is the oldest still shipping
Correct.
piece that you guys have.
Correct.
Leaving out the SID station.
Yes.
Machine drum is on Mark II.
That's right.
And
yes.
has gone through some hardware iterations as well as seeing its sort of software and firmware capabilities continuously upgraded.
Yes.
What can you tell us about the machine drum?
The machine drum is available in two different models. There's the machine drum and the machine drum UW. The only difference there being that the UW has the ability to sample with its external audio inputs, whereas the regular machine drum, all the sound is generated from the inside of the unit. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So looking at the machine drum here, what we have a nice big screen, and we have these endless rotary push encoders, which allow you to make fine adjustments if I just turn them. And when I push and turn, you can cover the entire range of the parameter with one turn of your wrist. So that's across all our devices. So the workflow when you're tweaking sounds and designing sounds gets really fast.
And these knobs get used for a lot of different things depending on what context you're in,
Exactly.
what you're editing at the time.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. With the machine drum, there's really only 3 pages of parameters that you can scroll between, so you can start to almost memorize what the knobs are going to do. I find myself looking at the screen less and less. So for example, if I'm over here in the synthesis page, these are the parameters that I can adjust when I'm, for example, sculpting a kick drum or sculpting a snare drum, or even modifying sample start and end times, fun things like that. And then you just go over to your other page, your effects and your routing, and then the knobs do different things.
So you mentioned before, machine drum is a digital drum machine.
Yes.
It's got a handful of a variety of different drum synthesis methods
Right.
or
We call them
engines on
right,
board.
Exactly,
Yep.
exactly. The difference between, for example, the machine drum and other drum machines in that respect is that you get a very, very wide palette of drum sounds, because each of the drum sounds can be using a different drum synthesis engine. So, for example, there's a virtual analog engine. There's also a physical modeling engine. There's also a 12-bit beatbox style engine where you get really chunky, gritty 12-bit samples like those classic 80s beatboxes. So there's quite a few different synthesis methods inside the box to keep you happy for quite some time.
And as you mentioned, if you opt for the user wave model, you
Yes.
can also not only load samples into it, but sample directly into it.
Exactly.
That's correct,
Exactly.
via the external audio inputs.
That's right.
We have individual outs.
Yes.
Like a couple of the other Elektron instruments, machine drum is also a capable MIDI sequencer for external gear.
That's right.
And that's probably what we need to cover there, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That covers it.
So then moving on to the mono machine, I know that it can do drum sounds as well, but as you mentioned, it's more of a digital synthesizer
Yes.
product. And what's its sort of setup?
Basically, the mono machine is a 6-track digital synthesizer. So that means you could load in, again, another machine or a separate machine on each of the tracks. So we have various interesting synthesis methods, like, of course, starting with virtual analog, so your square waves, your sawtooth waves. But then we have some very esoteric ones like FM with feedback. We have a vocal synthesis engine. So it starts to get very fun. There's probably no other box out there that has the synthesis types available to you at your fingertips.
And again, like the machine drum, external audio inputs
Yes.
for processing external sounds
Yes.
with its onboard engines and effects.
Correct.
Individual outputs for the 6 tracks.
Right.
Very capable MIDI sequencing capabilities for your external gear. And
There's also an arpeggiator for each of the 6 tracks that you can modify. So each of the 6 tracks can have its own arpeggiator settings and get some very interesting patterns. That way, if you're not sort of a virtuoso player, you can just hold down the keys and get really fun arpeggios going as well.
And even though mono is in its name,
Yes.
In addition to an ensemble sort of FM synthesis type, you do have the option to gang all the tracks together
Absolutely.
and play it polyphonically.
Absolutely, yeah. It can also be just a great 6-voice polyphonic synthesizer.
Cool. So moving on to the Octatrack.
Yes.
This was sort of a departure in terms of not having internal synthesis, and if nothing else, the color changed.
Yes, that
so you mentioned before it's a sampler, but in a way, just calling it a sampler is kind of selling it short.
It probably doesn't do it the most justice, because we basically attempted and succeeded with the Octatrack to cover as many possible ways that you could express yourself through the art of sampling. Essentially, it has 4 inputs and 4 outputs. It has 8 tracks, so you can record in real time, arrange your samples, load your samples, tweak your samples, and just have bucket loads of fun with one device without the need for any computer or anything like that. So it covers sampling and the art of sampling all in one device.
And I know there's an engine in there to sort of use it as a looper. And it's really, it would be hard to overstate the audio manipulation and mangling capabilities of the Octatrack, and important to keep in mind that it can all be done in real time.
Correct.
You can be grabbing
grabbing audio from from another hardware device or from a microphone or something, a guitar amp. You can be grabbing that audio in real time, resequencing it, manipulating it on the fly. It's very easy to save all your work and recall it later. So you can set the device up to really mold to the way that you want to work with the art of sampling and the art of looping.
Grab things on the fly, slice them up, rearrange the slices, all while the sequencer is running.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, it's kind of amazing. And, it's worth pointing out, too, that not everything needs to be single shots in it, or even short loops. With the compact flash memory, you could have song length samples on there. If you want to use it as a backing machine, it's sort of not exploiting all the capabilities that it can do, but you could use it that way. You can handle audio that long.
Absolutely, absolutely. All the audio is streamed directly off the compact flash card, which is included with the device. There's a USB port in the back, so you just plug that into your computer. The Octatrack shows up as a drive on your desktop. Just drag audio in. We're talking small half-second samples, all the way up to samples as long as an entire song or a stem, for example. It's a very capable machine.
Yeah, you mentioned really short samples, and that's at the opposite end of using it as a backing machine with song length tracks. Are the things people do with single cycle waveforms, sort of turning into a ersatz synthesizer.
Oh yeah,
almost.
Absolutely. Sample a single waveform in there, and now you've got a synthesizer, because you can load in filters. There's amps, LFOs, envelopes. So you're essentially, what you have is a synthesizer that uses samples as the basic building blocks, which opens up a pretty exciting world.
And I know there's a lot you can do too, besides using the 4 external audio inputs for sampling, just to run audio into there and run it through effects.
Exactly. Any of the audio that you run in through the inputs can be sent through any of the 8 tracks, and you can load up effects chains. So you can chain those effects chains together, so you have a very capable tabletop effects unit as well. And remember, all the effects can be automated with the step sequencer. So you have a beast that I don't quite know what to call it, but it's a very, very powerful effects unit in that way.
And something we shouldn't neglect to mention, I know we talked about how these 2 units are also capable MIDI sequencers for your external gear. The Octatrack steps that up almost even more so, not to sell these short, but the MIDI sequencer in here does some things that you typically would only associate with being able to do like in a DAW or something.
Absolutely,
in terms of automation over MIDI CCs, and it's a really powerful MIDI sequencer.
You bet,
besides being a great sampler.
Yeah, the MIDI sequencer is available simply by you click the MIDI button, and now it's sort of like you're seeing the backside of everything that you're doing. There's a full-fledged 8-track MIDI sequencer to run your other hardware, and it runs all in time with the sequencer that's playing your samples. There's a lot of fun things you can do with the MIDI sequencer as well. We even have like MIDI LFO generators that you can design yourself to spit out random or semi-random information to your other synths. So it's a very interactive tool.
Yeah, that's a great thing too, like you mentioned. Somebody who's used to working in a DAW, drawing automation lanes for different parameters, you can with the LFO designer here.
Yeah, get both hands into it and start drawing the LFOs with the knobs.
It's sort of like
a different experience.
Style.
Absolutely.
We'll probably come back and make a video showing off these capabilities more at some point. but it's an amazing MIDI sequencer. It's an amazing sampler and audio mangler in general. There's not really anything out there like the Octatrack.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's a lot you could make a video with the Octatrack for
Stay
sure.
tuned. And next up, you mentioned that you refer to this family over here as sort of the analog series.
Right.
And why don't we talk about the Analog Rytm?
Okay. The Analog Rytm is an 8-voice true analog drum machine with an integrated step sequencer to make patterns, but each of those 8 analog voices also has a digital sample playback engine. So that means you can play true analog voices as well as sampled sounds at the same time and kind of blend the two, so you can get, these unique, distinct samples that you can load in yourself, and then sort of that crispness and that fatness of a true analog voice at the same time.
So unlike some other analog drum machines that are out there where they sort of give you a general synth voice and let you sculpt a sound from that, this is more of sort of an old school approach where there's dedicated analog circuitry per drum type.
Exactly.
Is that right?
That's
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
That's right. We thought that it would be the most effective that each of the drum types, for example, your kick drum, your snare drum, your hi-hats, have a dedicated engine, a synthesizer engine, that allows you to sculpt those sounds, with the way that, you want to have some beef if you've got a kick drum, and you want to have some snap if you have a snare drum. But we also retain the ability to really drive those parameters to very far outer reaches of possibilities. So, yeah, we're kind of covering both elements there.
That's great. So moving on to these two, which I know you mentioned are sort of siblings.
Yes.
Since it came first, why don't we talk first about the Analog 4?
Great. Yeah, the Analog 4 is a 4-voice true analog polysynth with a dedicated step sequencer. It also has digital effects that we've developed in-house, so a high-quality chorus, delay, and reverb. In addition, it has an extra sequencer track that controls the CV outputs if you're into interfacing with classic analog gear or Eurorack modular gear, if you're into that kind of thing. So, yeah, a very powerful device.
And the CV gate sequencer really covers a variety of bases in terms of doing volts per octave. Does it
Hertz
also do
per
hertz per volt?
Absolutely.
S-trig.
V-trig,
Yeah.
positive polarity, negative polarity. It also sends a clock output with adjustable duty cycle. They're full-fledged CV outputs that are completely customizable in that way.
And all the hallmarks of the Elektron step sequencer in terms of parameter locking and things with LFOs can all now be applied to your old school analog or Eurorack or other CV gate equipped gear.
It's the most sophisticated step sequencer that there is for Eurorack modular gear.
Great. And then finally, the Analog Keys, which is sort of the big brother, big sister to the Analog 4.
Yes.
And your flagship keyboard workstation.
Yeah, the differences between the Analog 4 and the Analog Keys come in a couple forms. One of them is that each of your analog synth voices has its own dedicated output in the back, and you also have a beautiful feeling velocity and aftertouch sensitive keyboard that is mated with the analog synth engine in very interesting ways. It becomes a very expressive device. It feels great to play. You can select sounds very quickly, and we also have a multi-parameter joystick as well.
Which is unique to this guy.
Correct.
Not on the Analog 4.
That's right. Now, however, the synth engine is exactly the same, and the Analog 4 can respond to those inputs. If you have, for example, your pitch and your mod wheels on a MIDI keyboard, like a controller keyboard, the Analog 4 responds in just the same way.
Sure.
So it has an equally expressive synth engine. However, the Analog Keys form factor, you just get into this groove, you get into this relationship with your instrument. It gets fun real fast.
And it brings along everything else we were talking about in terms of the CV gate sequencing abilities.
It has that as well.
And
right.
adds the individual outs, and yeah. And then I know you guys also have a line of accessories to support all these products as
Absolutely.
well.
Yeah. We've got rack mount kits for the entire line of desktop units. These two have the silver rack ears. These, of course, have the black rack ears. We also have some carrying cases. This is our ECC2 carrying bag, so you can protect your investment. And the bags ship with the PL2 protective lid, which is also available separately. It acts as a dust cover and also a great protector for transportation. So if you have a lid, throw this in your backpack, throw it in your suitcase. And lastly, we have our gig bag. the EGB1 gig bag, which fits not only the Elektron analog keys, but it also allows you to fit up to 3 tabletop units organized this way with the removable inserts that it includes. Works as a backpack as well.
Yeah.
There's even a name card slot there.
Awesome. So just to sort of wrap things up, welcome again to Elektron. Welcome to the Kraft Music family. And thank you, Devon, for taking the time to visit us and introduce us to the products. This is a great primer, I think, for the Elektron product line. And to our customers, keep an eye out, not only, as we've mentioned a couple times, for more in-depth videos about these pieces, but also keep an eye out on our site for some of our solution-based bundles, including some of the accessories you've seen, some other components you might need to integrate these into your studio. And as always, if there's a bundle that you'd like to tweak a little bit, or you just don't see the exact solution you're looking for, by all means give us a call. We're happy to work with you to put together a custom bundle option. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.